Selena, yeah, it was great. A lot of information, so I'm sure that could generate a lot of questions, but we're already running a little. So if you can stay there, because Selena is kindly agreed to be part of the panel. So I suggest that you hold your question for the panel, because everything she said is a perfect introduction to the panel, and I'm now going to talk, well, to call on this at the table the other panelists. So we have Charles Yuo, is a co-founder of Temis and also part of this Paris de France SME initiative. Is that
Cap Digital?
Cap
Yes.
Digital. Then there is Carlos Guardia Rivas from IBM. So maybe you can see it here. And then unfortunately, because the last minute cancellation by Sergio Zazzera, who is vice president at ENI, so definitely a major producer and a consumer of data. Well, unfortunately, had a last minute problem to come here. And but we have Hilary Hinaho, who is so kind to be here from RDA Europe and RDA Global. And I'm very pleased to see that we have other important representatives of RDA Global Leadership. We have Fran, and we have Mark, and a few others. So I think we have pretty good components for a good discussion. Now, well, in any panel, I think I really like the chance. So each of our panelists maybe to say a few words on what they represent. I mean, what sector of industry or research they represent, and then maybe make a brief opening statement, and then we enter into discussion. Hopefully we'll open up to questions for the public, and hopefully we'll have an exciting debate. So, Selena, well, you already made your introduction, so probably we know where you stand. Charles?
Thank you, Fabrizio. So, I'm working in Paris region. My business is around text mining, and we are specialized in automatic text analysis. But as a member of Cap Digital, we represent about 1,000 company and research center and some partner in the room. And our interest is around artificial intelligence, big data, data mining, business intelligence, and all the search engine and all technology that are going to mine and analyze a large volume of data for industry, for innovation. So we have a set of initiative in Cap Digital called the Big Data Challenge, by which we invite industry and SMEs to propose a challenge on a large set of data, and then the few SMEs are selected to answer this challenge. They have 3 months for that. We had the challenge on HR, on insurance, health, and several other challenges. So when the general manager of Cap Digital, Patrick Coquet, asked me to join this industrial advisory board, I was very pleased to share with my colleagues our experience and our belief that in addition to the open data, open government data that is flourishing in France since 6 or 7 years now, with Etalab and with government initiative under Henri Verdier management, which is the new French data officer for the government. We are our proposal is to ensure some links between the industry and the research around data and large data access. We are special interest in the area of agriculture, health, food, energy, and transport. So those are the different topics, and I think we have an agenda for 2017 to work together with some other country in Spain, in Italy, and with other company, and try to push on what Selina just mentioned, try to push the use of a large volume of data within our industry. To do that, we need to understand better what type of data are produced within the RDA environment, what type of, you don't say standard, you say recommendation or technical recommendation you follow, what kind of indicator could we make on the quality of data available, and all those subjects, and also what type of contract or rules could be put in place to exchange data between research and industry, which is, I believe it's an exciting job for the next 25 years. So just before I retire.
Okay, thank you very much, Charles. Carlos, you want to add your point of view?
Yes, thank you, Fabrizio. Good afternoon. My name is Carlos Guardia, and I work for IBM Analytics in Barcelona, in Spain. My main area of interest, I would say, is big data, analytics. I'm based in many projects in data infrastructure, also data mining, etc. And I'm here in representation of IBM. And as IBM, we are interested in terms of data in, I would say, two sides. First of all, as a data provider, as you know, in the last few years, we have acquired several companies related to data, like the weather company. So we are selling data to companies that are willing to make predictions on this data. In the late times, we are also starting to use this data in order to produce our own predictions, and we also sell these predictions to companies that are interested in knowing which is going to be the weather on a given location. So we have Watson, the data science platform that is involved in this kind of analysis. We also acquired another company called Exploris, which is a large company for clinic data. So we are also trying to enhance this data. We are also using it to make our own predictions and to share this data with companies that are using that for investigation. We are also developing something related to Watson, which is the Watson Financial Cloud, in order to analyze all kind of financial data. So we are quite a lot on this business, but we are also a demander of data. So we try to use data for our own investigations. We also try to use this data for sharing with and collaborating with other institutions in order to promote the general, what we call the data science.
Okay, very good, thank you. So on my right, Hilar Hino, as I said, I mean, she's in an important position both in the RDA EU, I mean the RDA Europe and RDA Global. And I think it's important to have her because especially, during the discussion, we're certainly going to discuss, which role RDA is playing in providing access to data from industry, at least, policy access, which I think is very much part of the debate today. So, Hila, if you want to make an opening statement. Yes, it works better, yes.
It works better. Does it work? Yeah. I don't think it's turned on. Okay, so my name is Hilary Hanaho. I'm a director of Just IT Services, and I'm involved in the RDA Europe project, but I also sit on the Secretariat. I think there were two things that I wanted to bring up. One was perhaps it's useful to let you know what interaction or what level of interaction we've had with industry and enterprise in RDA to date. And then another point that I think is important, particularly in Europe for enterprises, the technical specifications coming from RDA. So the first, of course, we're 4 years old now. It's not that industry has never been important for us, but we have a huge stakeholder grouping in RDA. We're look right across the spectrum for different types of stakeholders and different domains, different technical aspects and things. So we started our activity with industry at the Plenary in Paris, hosted by Cap Digital, so it was quite fitting, and we had a data challenge for the private sector, mainly for SMEs and startups. I think we interacted a little bit with industry, but I think we're, thanks to BSC and this activity now, relaunching it, at least in Europe, with an industry advisory board. In Germany, there is some activity going on, and Peter, as part of the RDA Europe project, is also interacting with ITU on the IoT and different organisations. It was said this morning, actually, and Bob will be on the panel, Bob Hanish from NIST, but later on, it was said this morning that, I mean, we have already lots of stakeholders, but even the industrial ones, we have different messages and different added value and different value propositions that we need to define for them. And this is what I think the stage we are at now. What are the value propositions for RDA and for industry and mutually? Just a note on the technical specifications. So in Europe, as you know, RDA is not a standards body, okay, but we are recognised in Europe as being an organisation that issues technical specifications which are seen, if approved, of course, on the level of a standard. And RDA has, one, been recognised as an organisation for issuing them, so it's compliant. And we have 4 of our outputs are officially recognised as technical specifications. That means that they are, once published in the official journal of the European Commission, are eligible for referencing and use in public procurement. So that's really important. And to be recognised, there are a series of different compliance and requirements, but to be recognised, one of the most important things is market acceptance. And this means different, again, with different stakeholders. So market acceptance for some of the RDA outputs is our research organisations, but many also commercially. So that's an important, I think, I suppose quality control or stamp that's important to bear in mind, and something that we should clearly inform industry about. We have another 5 in the pipeline now, and 3 of them are on the publishing for the publishing set. So of clear interest to the publishing organisations, publishing houses, but not only. So I think those 2 elements are quite important to bear in mind.
Okay. Very good. Statics. Very good. So I think we have an interesting panel here, because what we go from the European Commission with their very important regulatory role, and from what from most of the things Selina told us, tremendous opportunity, but also kind of a several risk. So far nobody has mentioned ethics, but when we hear the IBM developing also systems who collect data that are mostly public available, so in a way they belong to the public, and then with that provide services to companies, and those services can be on the medical sector, so helping doctor for the diagnosis. They can help the farmer to plant better use, or maybe using less pesticides and so forth, by a more scientific planning of their farming. But we also can span to the to the juridic system. We hear that France is making the result, the judgments available, open access. So there will be more and more system that can help the judge to give, in theory, more fair judgment and faster. Therefore, this is I'm just back from Washington D.C. and there is very, very heated debate, because more and more the judges in the states where if you are familiar with the legal system in the state, it's very complicated. It's not like in most of European countries code based, but is sentence based. So very, very complicated. So the idea is that, by using this approach, you collect data, you apply machine learning, you apply statistics, and you try to help the judges to give out more fair and faster verdicts. But in a way that now seems to introduce, if it's not really ethically controlled, and there is important to have the role of regulatory bodies like the European Commission or the member states, it can actually introduce a lot of very dangerous biases. And also it's not yet a level playing field, because while the judge has access to the data, the defense has not access to the algorithmic that somehow analyze the data. So there is a very, very heated debate, and I'm a bit surprised that in Europe that we tend to be so much more sensitive than the rest of the world to the private citizen right, etc. This debate is not started yet, but I believe it's going to start. So there is a lot of implication. So I think to be successful and really to reach those kind of important market target that Selina was explaining, we need all the players. We need the regulators doing their job. We need industry really to innovate and provide innovative services using public access data. And there, in all this, RDA can indeed have a very important role, even if it's not per se a standard body, but it could be the place where it is already now, the place where, the different stakeholders get together twice a year, they discuss their, all those issues. They spin off working groups, and you're all familiar with the working groups, and then come up to recommendation, best practices, suggested outputs that can then be endorsed and help the process. So that is my first observation. So since I stopped I stopped the floor to ask questions, especially to our guest speaker, maybe I would like to give the word to the floor. So if I'm encouraged, question from the floors before we continue with the debate. So are there any questions specifically to Selina on their introductory keynote, or to any of the panelists, or just more comments you want to raise? I see already several hands. Okay, so I'm short-sighted, so you go first. Yeah, say who you are, yes, and your affiliation.
So I'm Bob Hanich from NIST. Selina, I think you're advocating for what I would call global interoperability of data, but achieving truly global interoperability is a very expensive proposition. And there are data types in different areas of research and industry for which there may be little real incentive to develop those interoperability standards. So I wonder where you draw the line. What is good enough and what is sort of out of scope in terms of what's achievable?
I don't think I was advocating a global interoperability. I mean, that would be a nice result, but what I was saying first is that we need to bring together policy work in different strands, because that isn't the case yet. But if you take interoperability as an example, there's work on interoperability for all of those types of data. So first, perhaps we have to look at what's being done on interoperability for research data, for privately held data, and for government data, and see what's being duplicated. I'm fully aware that global interoperability in a technical sense, I mean, that's going beyond also in terms of cost. So although I would like to have been advocating that, that's I would say the next step. Thanks for the comment.
Okay. Yeah, the lady there, name, affiliation, and your question, please.
Kathy Fontaine from the U.S. I'm on the RDA Secretariat, and this is for Selina. Thank you so much for your presentation. This is my field. I love it. I'm going to come talk to you. A specific question, though, is have you seen or do you anticipate any changes in the basic skills and capabilities required from the universities, from the K through whatever school systems to support this data economy that is being planned? Thank you.
Of course. I mean, that's a strand of work which I didn't mention, but it's it comes up. I would say there's a specific actions foreseen for that in the digital single market strategy. That digital skills are absolutely necessary, and not only in universities and schools, but then also in companies and industry. So absolutely. I didn't mention it specifically, but without that, we can forget the whole operation.
Okay, another question?
Dimitris Krias from the Natural History Museum, London. Selina, I think your presentation was fantastic, and I think it's a critical period now because we're starting to talk about regulating a field which is an extremely treacherous period for what we're trying to do. So I think the distinction, and excuse my comment here, but I think the distinction between research, industry, or policy, governance, government data is actually a false one. Data is data and can be used for any purpose. It's the application of the data that we are actually here putting the classification. So it's data that is useful for research, data that can be useful for industry. So it's at the point of application that the regulation needs to come in place rather than the point of exposure of the data and aggregation of the data. And I think it might sound a bit as a thin distinction here, but I think it's critical to have this in mind as we proceed on how we define and regulate an extremely difficult domain.
Yeah, thank you for that comment. Please come tell the European Commission that, because I fully agree. And that's one of the points I was trying to make, that in a way, regulation, rules, it's not all regulation, rules that we have are antiquated because they all start from places, 10, 15 years ago. And actually, increasingly, it's no longer relevant to start from a specific type of data, because the point indeed is application and reuse. So I agree, and that's what I'm there to try to push exactly that. But you know how things are a bit slow at that level. But come and tell the Commission.
Another question there.
Johannes Kaiser, Global Open Data and Agriculture and Nutrition Secretariat. There is a growing number of data sets and data repositories that are collected from, let's say, private citizens and under control from others. In our area, I referred example, all the data on precision agriculture. The agricultural equipment like tractors collect data, and they are at the research center of the tractor company. Or you could take something much more of common knowledge, supermarket registration cashier data. And these data are all of public interest, of research interest, but they are controlled by some people. They are owned not really by these people, because also by the private citizens where they origin from. So what is the regulatory path to make this data as much open as possible? There is an interesting EC directive at the moment about banking data. Maybe this is something what goes in this direction.
Well, I think the approach that would respond to your comment exists. It's called PIMS, Personal Information Management Systems. So the idea is really to take a citizen, individual-centric approach and say, the data that's connected to me, I manage, and I give access to that for specific purposes or not. So I think what you're saying is others de facto own data that relates to me, and I can control it. And that's indeed, I think, one of the trends we see, and one of the things that is a problem. And PIMS would be, I think, the approach there. Again, I think this is a process. So this. It's new. I think it'll take a number of years, but this is linked to GDPR also, the data protection regulation. Because again, I repeat, this regulation protects in terms of data protection, which is a good thing, but it also puts rules which makes it possible to port and to share data to the individual. So I think that's the first step, and then perhaps PIMS could be the second.
Okay, very good. So, question there, and then
Yes,
Ross.
Thank you. Edith Herzog, former MEP and member of the RDA. Data can be very same from the scientist perspective, but data can be very, very different from the property. And the data owned by the public sector, it belongs in Europe at least to the national sovereignty very much. And this is why the research data is so important to make it first move, because here we have the community policy, here we are talking about the research financed by the EU money, so the property rights, how to say, of the data far more community than some of the data which belongs to the member states. So tell to the member states what is the potential. It's not enough to say what to the Commission. I have a question to Celine, the following. You said that the legal and the technical environment has to move in parallel. And my question is, how do you see RDA can be an added value to move not only the technical, but also the legal discussion? Thank you.
How can RDA move the legal discussion? That's a good question. No, I haven't thought about it yet enough. I will. But off the top of my head, you're a unique, RDA is a unique organization which deals with research data, again, in a horizontal way. That's its big strength. So what you can do is give also political message on research data in general. And I think you're really a unique organization to do that. I don't know any other. So I think if you want to move the political debate, that would mean going to speak with policymakers, having studies with specific results that are put forward, press releases, that kind of thing, that underline the importance of research data for the data economy in a broad sense. But I would think about that more. Thank you.
Yeah, that is a good point. So maybe before we continue, I think, since this question was really asked to RDA, I don't know, Hilary, if you want to comment, or Mark?
Well, I think it's worth noting that there is actually, one of our outputs is the legal interoperability, the guidelines, and they are for funders and organisations. So there are, there are certainly guidance and best practice models of that. It's not a working group output, it's an interest group, so we call it, but that's there and very useful. And we've seen, I don't know if there's anyone in the room from the group. No, pity, but yeah, so there is, and it was a very popular group, and it's a group that has had a lot of, shall we say, interaction and requests on it, because it's quite a complex, as you know, area.
Indeed.
Yeah.
Mark, you want to add anything? Okay. Okay. Ross, yes.
Ross Wilkinson, Australian National Data Service. Celine, in your early slide, you talked about the value of making this data open and the billions of euros associated with that. In your end presentation, you talked about a data market that would work in industry. And I'm wondering if you have any thoughts about how value is transmitted in an open data environment. How we know when you publish a paper, you get value back because you get citations, you get promotions, etc. Do you have any thoughts about what an equivalent of a data market might look like for research data, as might well exist for industry data? Or is that a false distinction, referring back to the earlier comment?
I think it depends on how the data was produced, how it was funded, because depending on how it was funded, you'd have, if it's industrial research data, then there's a case for trading it. If it's 100% publicly funded, then maybe it's more difficult to talk about trading. So I think indeed, in that sense, it's a false distinction. I think what's important here is, how it was funded and where it comes from.
Okay, very good. Augusto?
Yes, Augusto Burgueño from the European Commission. I have a question for the representatives from industry. Just trying to bring back the subject of industry and RDA. And I have a question on something very specific. Industry is very much used to participating in standard setting processes, be them formal or informal. And my understanding is that there is always a commercial interest behind, more or less. I mean, to promote co-opetition, I suppose. In the specific case of research data, or data that is in between research or machine generated or government data, what would make difference the participation of the private industry in this, specification setting processes? So would you see differently participating in WC3, for example, from participating in RDA, or for you that would be something equivalent?
As I mentioned, IBM has a special interest in data, both from the part of business, but also as a way of collaborating with institutions. So we are holding a lot of quantity of data that we are able to share for research purposes. So we are participating in RDA, and we believe that this is a way of improving the knowledge and improving also the possibilities of machine learning and data science. So as I mentioned, we are also open to participate in this kind of events and share our data for research.
Well, representing, I would say, the SMEs, I would say we don't have so much time to dedicate to discussion around standard and normalization, and so we try. So as Cap Digital, we try to help SMEs to participate in those discussions, but it's not an easy element. So, but the interest is so. Well, a lot of our companies are IT companies, so we are pretty much interested in APIs to datasets, and so the every move that is made with, for instance, the portal of the Open Government portal in France is followed pretty carefully by all the players. Also, the rules around metadata are carefully followed, and I know that there is within RDA work on those topics. But the idea is to mix as much data as we can, and time after time, just to build up on those set of data. The most important things for us is perhaps less the standard, because we will take the data the way they are, but it's more the sustainability. I mean, if you start to develop a business using some data, agricultural data, precision agricultural data, for instance, then it's important that those data sets continue to flow, because it's unlike IBM, we are not in 20 segments for a single company, so very often players are just focusing on one specific domain, so data are really blood for them in their applications.
Okay, I think Auguste's intervention was very good, to preserve Selena to be the target of all questions throughout the panel, but I mean, it's just her fault. I mean, she gave such an interesting talk. But so bringing back now to industry, I think, we already discussed about that, and there was the intervention from the previous member of the European Parliament on the fact that it's not just the European Union that is the regulator, specifically now when we talk more and more, an open, data market, a digital data market, but it's also, the member states. So, and we have here representative of industry from both France and IBM in Spain. So are you involved in the discussion to create a legal and regulatory framework in the member states? Because when we discuss very much about, accessing public data, then to build on that business model that provide, commercial services, definitely is an area that need to be regulated. And how industry is involved in the process? Are you proposing SLAs that the government could either approve or disapprove at member state level? I'm curious because I'm not aware of this discussion. So I don't know if maybe IBM and then Charles want to respond. You want to go first?
I'm not sure about that.
Okay. So that's why I don't know, because there is not much discussion. Then I guess there should be. So that is already the first output. But
there's not so much discussion, but in France we have open discussion with an organism called EtaLab. EtaLab regulates the open access to open data from the government. So we're pushing hard to get rules around metadata, and so in order to be able to interoperate different datasets, and so we have regular discussion with them on those topic. We have less discussion with the scientific community on what they are doing, and I know there is several large institutes like INRA, like INRIA, like CNRS that are member of RDA, but we don't have much discussion around, and despite all the work done by Patrick Coquet. I think also it's a question of maturity of RDA on one hand and maturity on our ecosystem on the other hand. So perhaps 2017 is the right moment to fill the gap.
Okay, very good. So I think we still have 4 minutes to go before we start with we move to the next panel. I see 2 questions. I think that can be the 2 conclusion questions. I mean, yeah, geographically it's easier to go left, right. So let's go.
Me first?
Yeah, go first.
I'd be interested in thoughts from the industry representative.
Yeah, the name, affiliation.
Sorry, Ian Bruneau, Cambridge Crystallographic Data Centre. I'd be interested in the thoughts from the industrial members of the panel of how the RDA could get more industrial use cases into its activities, because I think it is largely an academic enterprise, but I also think there's probably a lot of impact that could come from addressing use cases that will help solve problems that you're facing in an industrial context.
For
SMEs, it's pretty simple. It's just to expose more RDA to our community. We have different community, different association, so it's a matter of communication mostly, and also understand from our community how we can access those data and what are those data, are they available, and probably one of the work we need to do this year is to make this link between set of communities on the industrial side, and spend 1 day or 2 days like workshops between a scientific data provider or producer on one hand, and a set of 10 or 20 companies that are good target for those data sets. I mentioned 5 key areas: agriculture, health, food, energy and transport. We can have others, but we can also talk with Romain. Romain, if you can, yeah. Romain Mellet is from Cap Digital and is managing the Big Data Challenge. So he's interested in data sets. He's the man who is going to introduce RDA also in Cap Digital and in Paris more actively.
For IBM, it's also important to participate in this kind of meetings because we can then see what is the industry needs for data. And now we have basically 3 models for weather data, financial data, and also for clinic data. And now we see that there are some interest for agricultural data. Also, you mentioned tractors, which is quite new for me. And I think it's a way of knowing which is the needs of the industry so that we can develop the appropriate services.
Okay, Hilary?
No, I just wanted to say that I think that enterprise, it's actually local. It's regional and it's national, but it's certainly not, international. We're an international organization. Industry is important to us. And it's a global issue. So we are talking here on a panel that's European, but it's not, it can't stop there. And we know that there's activities going on in the other regions, and it must be. But we've seen, in Europe, we have seen that activities on a national level are important. And this would be and should be one of the ways, and we were talking about it before with the industrial representatives, of bringing this closer. And that means going and speaking to them in their language, and doing, intensive training work. And I mean, we have another example of it too. So while it's we're an international organization, it's really important for us. We also have to bear that in mind, and we have to find the ways of doing it. And I think that's how we will also get these industrial use cases and the interaction. So we're very aware of that.
Very good, thanks, Hilary. So we have 1 minute. So let me spend this 1 minute try to, wrap up and bring the. Oh, there was another question.
There were 2.
So you're stealing 1 minute. Okay, so go ahead.
Can I steal your minute?
No, okay, no, it's okay. We will overshoot the 1 minute. Nobody will notice.
I'm Jonathan Clark from the DOI Foundation. I really have two questions. I'm thinking forward. Okay, we've got a data economy. I'd love to build products and services based on it, but I have two problems that I have to deal with. One is, how do I know that the data is really what it says it is? So how do I know that the data that I've got from the portal is actually the real data from the EU, or is it some spoof site or whatever? And the second question I have is, how do I know that I can rely on that data in the future so that when I build my lovely products and sell them and make a fortune, that my customers aren't going to suddenly be left in the lurch because the original data has disappeared? What are we doing, at least from the EU or other perspectives, to deal with both of those?
Yeah, I'm afraid that is again for Selina, because I mean that is basically, preserving the quality of the data, decide on the provenance, how reliable the data are or issue that can only somehow be helped by having the proper regulatory framework that basically decide who is responsible if the data, for instance, are not reliable. Then the system that whoever develops, provokes some problems, or who is liable. I think that really enters in the domain of Selina.
But I think this is a perfect transition to the next panel, because the European Open Science Cloud promises to offer exactly this kind of service that should address exactly these kinds of issues. So it's much more. It should be much more than a storage space and an access space. It should also be a space which looks into quality assurance, preservation. So I really think it's a good transition.
Okay, very good. I'm still going to take my 1 minute.
Sorry.
I'm going still to take 1 minute. It's my privilege being the moderator. So I think it was a pretty exciting discussion. I mean, definitely to which Selina contributed very well with an introductory talk, which generated a lot of questions. I think that what personally I retain that is really the importance of the regulatory roles, the regulatory role of the European Commission, but not only. So people observe that the European Union can only have a complementary role to the locality of the data and locality of the data business. And Hilary also, alluded to that. So we really need to understand how the process goes in the member states, and we have a strong suspicion that the member states are not discussing that well enough. I understand that the next generation of RDA Europe is going to support more work at the level, at national level. We just had before here the definition of embryonic RDA Spain, RDA Iberia, which is definitely good to bring awareness of the problem that if we want to be successful in really improving the digital economy in Europe, we really need to understand how to handle data, and service level agreement need to be defined, all the question about reliability and liability issue concerned with the data, and not to mention, the long-term preservation of data, because the observation of the last question is very, very relevant. You can build all your entire business on data which are publicly available, but who is going to ensure you 10 years down the road those data are still maintained, those data are still curated, those data are still accessible? So I think it's really a tremendous, complex, but very, very critical domain where we are going to operate. We're already operating today. I think most of all those IBM business model represent are already available today. Watson is available today. Watson is used already today. So I think there is a tremendous amount of work to be done, and I believe RDA, as Selina was saying, has a unique role and a unique opportunity, to really complement and support this process. So with this word, I really would like to bring to a closure the first panel and give the table, whatever, the elevated table to Richard Hudson, who has been very good to join us from Brussels. He runs Science Business, which is a very interesting organization that really they do a lot of policy analysis and study of the European Commission and their dealings. So Richard, if you want to